Hello, and welcome once again to Political Sociology. Our topic for this week is ideology and definitions of ideology, how ideology functions, and what the concept of ideology might help us to understand. So let's take a look first at the outline. For this week's lecture, it will be divided into 4 parts. This first part is introductory notes, and we'll be talking about definitions and giving an overview of some basic concepts of ideology. Then, in the second part, we're going to move into detail and talk about different definitions of ideology and what is at stake in some different definitions of ideology. Then, we're going to start looking at some functions of ideology, at the concept of meta-ideology, at the relation between ideology and social control, ideology and power, and also explore some of the contradictions involved in ideology. And then finally, in the fourth part, we're going to look at some of the ways in which ideas or the concept of ideology can be applied in doing your analysis in political sociology. So, moving into some introductory considerations. Now, one thing that you'll notice it in the material here, and you'll notice it in the material that you look at on all of our other topics, is that very often, like a lot of the terms that we use in the field of political sociology, in research in general, there are debates over definitions. Do not be intimidated or set back by the fact that there are debates over definitions. Debates over definitions do not mean that there is a lack of clarity. This is, I think, the wrong way to interpret a debate over definitions. Interpret the debate instead as meaning that something is at stake in the ways that things are understood, that differences between definitions are important and that they have implications for the kind of analysis that you'll do, the kind of understanding that develops. And as a theorist, this fact is useful to you. Debates over definitions give you an outline view of the larger debates in the field. And when you choose between competing definitions and explain why you've made the choices that you've made between competing definitions, you're beginning to do your independent theorizing. Now, moving into ideology, we can talk about types of definitions, and you're going to get several different versions of types of definitions. Let me begin most broadly. Here are 2 very general ways in which we can think about ideology. Probably the most frequently used one, and this is the one that's dominant in fields like political science, is that what ideology provides is a set of instructions about what you ought to think. That is, it's a set of proposals or ideas or a program. A more sociological definition would be to look at ideology not as instructions on what to think, but as instructions on what not to think about. This may sound a little bit paradoxical to you, but in a lot of sociological approaches, especially culturally oriented political sociology, it's this proposition that's the most interesting. And here's the implication of it. It's that any time a person makes a statement, a kind of invitation to common sense or to implicitly shared understandings, anytime somebody says, that's just the way it is, or you have to accept things the way they are, or you just can't do anything about it, or this is what the world is like. That is an expression of ideology. And what this does rhetorically, what the function of this is not so much to propose ideas as it is to make the proposition that no ideas apply because everything has already been resolved. Another shorthand a way of understanding ideology is that what ideology offers is a variety of ways of making the statement, this is what is really important here, which always implies the converse statement, this other thing is not the real issue. Okay? So if somebody says this is the real issue or what you're talking about is not the real issue, this is ideology. If we want to try to formulate this more simply, what we can say is that in this case, we're viewing ideology as taking a set of specific priorities and concerns and postulating that they represent some kind of order that is transcendent or permanent. So ideology might be thought of in this way, as a rhetorical move to try to shift a discussion from the realm of interests to the realm of ideas. When we return in a moment, we'll talk a little bit more about some of the most frequently used definitions of ideology.